Hi everyone, my name is Kirsten and I'm presenting on behalf of myself, Jacqueline, Jenny, and I'm presenting on behalf of myself, Jacqueline, Jenny, and Rachel. For our behavioral intervention, we focused on the Transtheoretical Model of behavior change. So for this presentation, we'll start with a general overview of the theory and its components. We'll then get into some research that has used the Transtheoretical Model and discuss a journal article. Then we'll get into the advantages and shortcomings of the theory. And finally, we'll talk about some suggested applications. So starting with an overview. The Transtheoretical Model is really one of the dominant models of behavior change. It was developed in 1977 by James Prochaska and colleagues at the University of Rhode Island, and it proposes a 6-stage process for progressing to a health behavior change. And as you can see with the diagram on the right here, it's really meant to be seen as a cyclical process. And oftentimes people will move in and out of one stage before progressing on to the next one. So really it's an integrative model to conceptualize the process of intentional behavior change. And this theory really focuses on the decision making of the individual. And it suggests that behavior change unfolds through a series of changes. It uses the stages of change to integrate processes and principles of change across major theories of intervention. In terms of application, it's been used to develop effective interventions to promote behavior change, and health programs and interventions can facilitate behavior change by assisting people as they progress and move through the stages. It does require an assessment of an individual's current stage of change and accounting for relapse in the decision-making process. So the stages of change are really the main basis for the model. And the length that a person stays in each stage is variable. And they, again, like I mentioned, they can go backward and forward before moving on to the next one. So here they are listed here. Really, the first 5 are part of the main theory, and the termination phase has not been studied as thoroughly to this point. But now we're just going to go in and talk about each of the stages. So pre-contemplation is when a person is not ready for change. So people in this stage do not tend to take action in the next 6 months, and they tend to avoid reading, talking, or thinking about their high-risk behaviors. So possible explanations for someone being in this stage is that they are uninformed about the consequences of their behavior, or they've tried to change several times and they become discouraged. People in the contemplation stage are getting ready to change. So people in this stage intend to change their behaviors in the next 6 months, and they are more aware of the pros and cons of changing their behavior than someone in the pre-contemplation phase. People who are in the preparation phase are ready for change. So people at this stage intend to take action in the next month, and they have a plan of action, or they've already taken steps towards the behavior change, like talking to their physician or buying a self-help book. People in the action stage have made specific overt changes in their lifestyle within the past 6 months. And then finally, those in the maintenance phase have made specific overt changes in their lifestyle and are working to prevent relapse, and they do not apply change processes as frequently as people in the action stage. So the processes of change are activities that people need to apply to move from stage to stage. And they include things like self-reevaluation, so creating a new self-image, self-liberation, making a commitment, helping relationships, so seeking support from others, reinforcement management, using rewards, and stimulus control, which is managing their environment. Another thing that needs to be considered is decisional balance, and this sort of shifts depending on which stage a person is in. So it's all about weighing the pros and cons of the behavior change. So as an individual goes through the stages of change, the decisional balance will shift. In the pre-contemplation phase, the cons of behavior change outweigh the pros. And in the contemplation phase, cons and pros carry equal weight. And if the pros outweigh the cons, the individual moves into the preparation or action phase. And finally, self-efficacy needs to be considered. So this is the degree of confidence individuals have in maintaining their desired behavior in high-risk situations. So it encompasses the confidence in healthy behavior change across challenging situations and the temptation to participate in unhealthy behaviors across challenging situations and how people can avoid those. So now moving on to the research behind the Transtheoretical Model. The journal article our group chose to look at was called A Comparison of Profiles of Transtheoretical Model Constructs of Change Among Depressed and Non-Depressed Women at Risk for an Alcohol-Exposed Pregnancy. So the rationale for the study is to use the Transtheoretical Model to prevent alcohol-exposed pregnancies and to provide practitioners with a roadmap of how to better tailor their intervention for depressed women. The population included women ages 18 to 44 at risk for an alcohol-exposed pregnancy. The status on Transtheoretical Model constructs of change was compared between depressed and non-depressed women, and measurements were taken at baseline and at a 9-month follow-up using the ideas of decisional balance, self-efficacy, and experiential and behavioral processes of change. So questionnaires were administered, again, at those 2 time points. For first, the decisional balance scale for alcohol, which assessed the importance a participant has on the pros and cons for changing alcohol behavior. A self-efficacy questionnaire was also given out to determine participants' confidence to resist alcohol in specific situations. And finally, there was a questionnaire that addressed the experiential and behavioral processes of change. So it determined how often participants will use each process in helping them avoid alcohol. So the experiential process involved consciousness raising, dramatic relief, and self-reevaluation. And the behavioral processes involved self-liberation, counter-conditioning, and stimulus control. The results of this study show that depressed women scored higher on pros for change and cons for change. And they scored lower on confidence to change and higher on temptation not to change. The end result being that depressed women are less likely to avoid alcohol and are at higher risk for alcohol-exposed pregnancy. Therefore, interventions should focus on assessing depression and targeting the needs of depressed women. So now to discuss the advantages and shortcomings of the Transtheoretical Model. The advantages are that it's very generalizable across a broad range of problem behaviors and populations. It also can lead to high impact programs, and research shows that it can be, again, used across several age groups. And the truth is, there's a lot of research to back this theory up. In terms of shortcomings, the Transtheoretical Model has not been shown to be effective in cases of primary intervention, like for substance abuse in children. It also presents certain complications when trying to change multiple behaviors. Additionally, modifications need to be made for specific types of behaviors, like those that are more infrequent, like mammography screening, or behaviors that may relapse less often, like sunscreen use. Finally, cultural variance will determine the effectiveness of the Transtheoretical Model. In other words, some cultures it may be effective, and others it may not work the same way. So in terms of suggested application, it's very widespread. Everything from alcohol and substance abuse prevention to obesity, eating disorders, HIV/AIDS prevention, cancer screening, mammogram screening, high-fat diets. The Transtheoretical Model really can be applied in a wide range of cases. So now I'd just like to play this video for you.
The next stage is their behavior. One of the best ways to understand the model is to apply it to an example of an individual progressing through the stages. This is Billy. He often eats fast food to save time in his busy schedule. He is in the stage of pre-contemplation, meaning he has not thought about the effects of eating fast food for many of his meals. To progress to the next stage, the first process of change, conscious raising, is applied. He may have heard about the movie Super Size Me and found out that fast food diet is very unhealthy. Now that he has some small amount of awareness, he has progressed to this contemplation stage. where he begins to look more closely at his behavior. He notices that some of his clothes are not fitting like they used to. The process of change that might affect him now is dramatic relief, where he begins to have anxiety due to his unhealthy behavior. He may also see others who have lost a lot of weight and be encouraged to do the same. But at this point he sees the pros and cons as about equal and is not really ready to change his behavior until he goes through another process known as self-evaluation, where he realizes that being healthy is something he really wants, and the decisional balance begins to shift towards the pros of losing weight outweighing the cons of it being difficult. Environment reevaluation is when the individual realizes how their unhealthy behavior affects others. Billy realized that he wasn't able to keep up with his coworkers anymore when they would go play basketball. This leads him into preparation stages of change, processes of change, decisional balance, and self-efficacy. On stage, where he begins to think about how he could lose the weight. His self-efficacy begins to increase as he goes through the next processes of change, social and self-liberation. He discusses his future goals of losing weight to his wife and coworkers and realizes that the people around him would support this change, and then begins to believe in himself. At this point, he makes a plan to cut out his junk food and start eating healthy meals. Helping relationships are another process that affects him when his wife offers to start packing his lunches for him. Once he begins eating his packed lunches and a healthier breakfast, he is in the action stage. This is where the behavior is changed, but it takes a lot of effort to make the new behavior stick. Some of the processes or strategies used at this stage can be counter-conditioning and reinforcement management. Counter-conditioning refers to substituting healthy alternatives to unhealthy behaviors. Instead of having a milkshake like Billy used to do often, he has begun having a smoothie made with fresh fruits. Reinforcement management is increasing the rewards for the positive behavior and decreasing the rewards for the negative behavior. Billy has been noticing his old clothes are fitting better again and no longer sees the need for fast food. Finally, Billy transitions into the maintenance stage, where he must continue to use reinforcement management and stimulus control to make the new behavior a lasting change. Stimulus control is using reminders to encourage the healthy behavior. Billy may begin weighing himself every morning to continue to keep in his mind that he is happy with his behavior change and does not want to slip back into his unhealthy habits.
That concludes our presentation. Thanks for watching.